Nice Radio Callaloo presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio. First aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. You can catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. You can check out our Just Another Look blog, www.justanotherlook.com. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Today, dear friends, is Saturday. It is the 29th day of December 2018. Welcome to another edition of your favorite program, Just Another. Today's program essentially looks at the year in review in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As we come to the end of yet another year, Just Another Look wishes to reflect on the major socio-political issues that impacted our beautiful St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So here we go. The biggest story for 28, the case of Yogi Farrell. That's the biggest story for 2018. But Just Another Look, the year's biggest story in this country was that of the insulting language charge brought against Yogi Farrell. On Monday, the 17th of December 2018, Senior Magistrate Ricky Burnett dismissed the case brought against Yogi Farrell, and the reason? For want of prosecution. For want of prosecution. The reason that this particular case is placed at the top of the heap of stories in this country, issues in this country for 2018, is because of what it speaks to in regard to Vincentian jurisprudence and the nature of Vincentian politics. Just Another Look continues to ask Vincentian to please develop a culture of always applying one's critical thinking skills to everything that happens around you, everything you see and everything you hear, in order to grasp a better understanding of what is taking place in our society, of the critical things that are taking place in our society. You know, Vincentians need to ask a number of questions in respect of this Yogi Farrell case. You see, while Senior Magistrate Burnett declared her plea before Magistrate Pompey in January of this year as a nullity, the reality is that it appears that everyone wants us to believe that there was evidence that Yogi Farrell was unfit to enter a plea. Yeah? Everyone seems to want the nation to believe that she was unfit to enter a plea. Okay? Now, common sense would dictate that if indeed the court was in possession of information as important as whether or not Yogi Farrell was fit to enter a plea in the case brought against her originally, that it would have been considered improper then to ask her to plead. That is a common sense, logical approach. If you knew beforehand that you had in your possession, the court had in its possession, information that allowed the same court to determine that she is not fit to plead, then why ask her to plead? Doesn't that seem logical? But we went ahead and asked her to enter a plea. What did we expect? That because we have in our possession in the court information that she should not enter a plea, we expected her to then, on her own volition, enter a plea of guilty? What then would have been the reaction of the court had she entered a plea of guilty at the time in January of 2018 instead of a plea of not guilty? But she entered a plea of not guilty and was summarily sent to what we refer to here as our Red Roof Institution in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So how much sense does it make? So it appears that in this country, logic is not always deemed sufficiently important. So when people objected to her being asked to enter a plea, and then afterwards, she's committed to our Red Roof Institution in the country, it seems as though that irked some others who were anxious to come and say that of course, the court has the right to be able to apply information that it has not necessarily brought into the public domain, or for that matter, to the accuser's lawyers, to the accused legal team. Because clearly at the time, a legal team was not aware of information that would have led the magistrate to commit her to a Red Roof Institution. But that is what happened in our court in this country. But you see, this is not a simple matter. The legal issue appears to be wrapped up in social, cultural, and political issues. So Farrell ended up with a plea of not guilty and then committed to the Red Roof Institution in Glen. Perhaps the most important aspect of the entire case is what Vincentians have been asking, but which did not necessarily feature in court. You see, Vincentians took to call-in radio program as soon as the first case was called, as soon as the case was first called. And people started asking whether the initial charge laid against Farrell emerged out of a soured relationship between herself and the Prime Minister's son, Camilo Gonzalez. But you see, when you raise this aspect of the issue, the minions of the ruling ULP become agitated. They get upset. But isn't that the crux of the matter? Is that the crux of the matter? A soured relationship between Yugi Farrell and Camilo Gonzalez. Is that the crux of the matter? Because of the media discussions that emerged after the first hearing in early January of this year, many callers were bothered by the way the justice system in St. Vincent and the Grenadines appeared to be working. And callers on different radio programs expressed concern. And they wondered as to whether or not there were political machinations at work in this particular matter. So, when one looks at the story, at the case, etc., one may be forced to ask whether the real issue is, did Camilo Gonzalez, Minister of Government, married man, Prime Minister's son, engage in an extramarital affair with Yugi Farrell? Was that affair of long standing? Did it extend to such an extent that he may have been responsible for her accommodation? Is that a fair question to ask? Is that an issue? Because many of the callers seem to think that that may have been the issue, so we're asking, is that true? Because while people were talking about the video that emerged, some were willing to say, oh, she's mentally unstable. That's why they had to send her to the Red Roof Institution. Because she says all these things. But ask, are these things true? Has she recanted? Has she withdrawn the comment that she made then about their relation? But you see, we don't want to discuss these issues because we believe they are anathema. Others may believe, well, why should we discuss them anyway? Because they're part of a changing culture in Vincentian society. That marriage is perhaps no longer sacrosanct. And perhaps that women are open season for politicians. But it is also important for us to ask if Camilo's wife, Duncan Gonzalez, was aware of her husband, Camilo, having an extramarital affair with Yogi Farrell. Was she aware? You see, while Camilo's father, who is the leader of the ULP, the Prime Minister of this country, a Minister of National Security, and a lawyer of some standing, while he may have insisted that Camilo was advised to maintain what he termed a dignified silence, the average Vincentian may well want to know whether or not he, the father, was aware of his son having an extramarital affair with Yogi Farrell. Was he aware? Was he perhaps thinking that this is normal in the scheme of Vincentian politics? Was he of the view that perhaps this is normal in the changing culture of St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Was he perhaps of the view that this is part of the changing morality in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which will well mean no morality at all, the absence of any sort of morality? We have to understand here that the Prime Minister was the one to speak of Yogi having delivered a blackmail letter to Duncan Gonzalez at the latter's office at the time. He was the one who brought that information. He was the one who told the nation about some contents of the letter that were considered blackmail. But the average Vincentian must ask, but why would Yogi Farrell have written such a letter? Why would she have confronted Camilo's wife at her office to deliver this letter? And then to use what she was charged for, insulting language, against Camilo's wife. Why? Because if we want to suggest that she's mental, then perhaps she would have been left in the Red Roof Institution for a very long time. But eventually, she's brought release from that institution. And her case called on the 17th of December, 2018. She's freed. There's no charge for want of prosecution. So what was the hullabaloo about if in the end you're not even going to be able to present a case for the prosecution of the young woman? Is it that we hope that St. Vincent has a 9-day culture so that after that everybody forgets about everything? But this story made the rounds for a significant part of the year because of who were involved. Because of who were involved. You see, we have to understand here, or to ask ourselves, why would Farrell have found it necessary to pen such a quote-unquote blackmail letter and then hand deliver it to Duncan Gonzalez, Camilo's wife, at her workplace? Why would Farrell have considered it appropriate to use the terms she did while hand delivering the letter to Camilo's wife. You see, the seeming altercation that took place between Farrell and Duncan Gonzalez led to Farrell being charged for using insulting language against Duncan. A charge that has since been dismissed by the court for lack of prosecution. So just 3 weeks short of 1 year, as Grant Connell said in the court, just 3 weeks short of 1 year with this case. And Yogi Farrell, having been subjected to an extended stay at the Red Roof Institution in Glen, has had her case dismissed for want of prosecution. Why the fuss? Why the case in the first place? We ask, was it because Camilo Gonzalez is being considered as the political heir apparent? Is that why we sought to make a fuss? Was it because some seem to think that Camilo is being groomed for the leadership of the Unity Labour Party on the one hand and the Prime Ministership of St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the other? Whatever the reason, dear friend, whatever the reason, the fact of the matter is that the case of Yogi Farrell, her stay at the Red Roof Institution in Glen, and the eventual dismissal of her case speaks volumes of the way in which we do things here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Camilo's wife, Camilo, his wife, and Yogi Farrell will have to live with the truth as much as they will eventually die with that truth. But you see, dear friends, we must be concerned that while we expect values to change, beliefs to change, and behavior to change over time, Vincentians must determine what values are important to them. What are our core values? And does morality feature amongst these values? Just Another Look has expressed concern that it appears to the average Vincentian that politicians on both sides of the aisle, ULP and NDP, may well be espousing a new morality, which we refer to as the absence of any sort of morality. And people are aware, since in some instances, the matters have reached the public domain. So that it may well be that we want to accept the absence of morality as the new morality for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that we should not hold politicians accountable but we also need to ask whether or not we have reached a stage in our lives where it is possible for us to accept willy-nilly that every woman out there becomes fodder for politicians? Is that the way we wish to go? So that other people's wives or other people's husbands or what have you, become open season? Is that the society we wish to create? So that other people can do it? Religious leaders, other members of the society. So it's open season for everybody. Everybody could decide that we don't need any morality anymore. But one has to admit that the Yogi Farrell issue gained so much traction in this country. So much traction that the airwaves were inundated with calls in recognition that there was more in the mortar than the pestle. And that at the end of the day, there was more left unsaid than was actually said. But these are issues that we do not like to discuss. We prefer to leave them, bury them under the proverbial carpet, because they make us uncomfortable. We are quite happy with the way things are. That is why you got father, brother getting involved in some of the discussions. Because in the beginning, it appears as though they felt it necessary to become part of the dialogue. But apparently, soon enough, they found out that the public had become a sort of battering ram and had garnered support, aligned their support behind Yogi Farrell, in recognition that she perhaps may well have been a victim. Just Another Look asks today, the 29th of December 28, are there more such victims? Are there more such victims? Really, at the end of the day, how do they feel? How do the victims feel? But you're listening to Just the Year in Review 28. The year's biggest story, the Yogi Farrell case. The year's biggest flop, 2018. Perhaps the year's biggest flop is the Prime Minister and leader of the Unity Labour Party at its most recent convention. The Prime Minister and leader of the Unity Labour Party at his organization's most recent convention. The year's biggest flop. Here was the leader of the party. At the party's 23rd convention. Here was the man who is the country's longest serving prime minister in the history of the country. But here is he seemingly lost on the occasion of the 23rd event. Seemingly lost. One would have expected that being the country's longest serving prime minister, being the leader of the party, and at the celebration of the 23rd convention, that his presentation would have reflected some scholarship. After all, you remember prior to the elections in 2001, he was touted as the nation's brightest individual deserving of becoming the Prime Minister of the country. But over time, we have seen his scholarship decline, just as we've seen his charisma decline. So here was an opportunity to display some scholarship. And instead, what we got was babble, 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 babble. Rambling rose. All over the place. And when one reviews the presentation, despite what the party may attempt to do and have been attempting to do in the newspaper sections, essentially the presentation lacked scholarship. It lacked intellectual depth. And to some extent was not as cohesive as one would have expected from someone with his level of experience and leadership. But unfortunately, what Gonzalez delivered was more about his apparent concern about the growing strength of the opposition New Democratic Party, especially since the latter's first official visit, official contact with China. That featured more in his presentation. And as we mentioned in an earlier program, it was because of a seeming fear that such a contact could give rise to a new level of confidence and dynamism and politicking from the opposition party. His presentation reflected his fear of the opposition. All one has to do is to listen to what he said. It is your party. It is your moment. And you take it to discuss the opposition. You see, one expects the ruling party to display leadership rather than be eager to engage in political trite, in political nonsense. But unfortunately, what the membership of the Unity Labour Party got at its convention, what the minions received, was the rambling of an aging politician, clearly fearful of loses his treasured stance of swiveling in the big chair. That's what you got. Listen to the speech, if you could call it that. The ULP's leader at his own convention in 2018 rambled just about all over the place, giving listeners around the nation reason to believe that he is at the end of his political tenure, that he is tired, yet unwilling to step aside, trying to muster the courage to take one last grasp one last hold of the mantle of leadership of the country that he has led over the past several years. The sight of a jaded Ralph Gonsalves at his own party's convention is nonetheless reflective of many a Caribbean politician. How often have we seen them? How often have we seen them? Whether it's a Papi Josh or a Milton Cato or a Bear Bird Sr. or an Eric Williams or a Forbes Burnham or a Michael Manley. How often have we seen them? They know that they should leave, but are incapable of doing so, having perhaps convinced themselves that only they know what is best for the nation. You see, in the realm of politics, the idea is to grasp hold of government. Political parties exist for one reason only: to strive to gain hold of governance. That's what they're about. Acquisition of political power. That's what it's about. And Glenn Jackson reminded us that when the ULP won in 2001, they came into power. Remember him on the platform? We are in power. And then we had one of their own members at a previous convention telling the minions, we must not only own the party, we must not only own the campaign, we must own the jobs. In other words, the country is ours. Giving credence to the concept, not of together now, but of labor now and labor forever. That for you to be able to get a job, if you're a party supporter, we should own those. We should own the jobs in the country. That is a politician who happened to be a minister of government making that statement at a convention of his party. We should own the jobs. He has never been chastised for that pronouncement. Never been chastised for that pronouncement. But it is reflective of a position that suggests the country should be divided. Even our economic fortunes, in terms of jobs, should be divided along political party lines. So it should not surprise us that at his own convention, the fear of losing control of the levers of government should be dominant in his rambling. But at the convention, the biggest flop is not only about Gonsalves' loss of charisma and his fear of the relationship between the NDP and the Chinese. It is also about what Just Another Look has labeled the martyrdom syndrome. Because it appears as though Gonsalves has a martyrdom syndrome. he used the platform of his party's 23rd convention to tell us all another story about another plot to assassinate him. And if you've been following the politics of Gonzalez, you tell yourself, oh, here we go again. Here we go again. Just Another Look has on several occasions reminded Vincentians of the story that Gonzalez presented in this nation's parliament in January of 2011. A few weeks after losing 4 seats in the elections of December 2010. And he found it appropriate, having skated through the elections with a 1-seat majority, having started 12-3, emerged 8-7. And on the day they were starting the discussion on the estimates, he had this story about a plot to assassinate him. We are all too familiar with that story, occupying a whole lot of time. This time around, Gonzalez's story is no less muddled and no more convincing. Because one cannot understand why, if you have all this evidence that somebody trying to assassinate you, and it's not the first time you say you have the evidence, why choose your party's convention rather than a national address, an address to the nation about it? Because after all, we are talking about not just the leader of a political party, we are talking about the prime minister of a country who also happens to be the nation's minister of national security. That requires national attention. If indeed there is a plot to assassinate the prime minister of our country, it is of and must be of national import. But you choose your party's 23rd convention to discuss it, to present it. You choose a forum where you can garner support. That is the very dangerous part of this particular. Very, very dangerous. Yes. You see, Gonzalez, in what may well be an attempt at intrigue, spoke at the convention about this plot and stated that he did not publicly reveal the information that he has in respect of the plot before now. Of course, as Minister of National Security, he would receive much information about crime and potential crime. However, as far as we are aware, it is under his watch as Minister of National Security that we have had record-breaking numbers of murders over the years of his government administration. So in terms of national security, we haven't been doing particularly well under his watch. But just as a matter of information, we may ask, was it Prime Minister Gonzalez, who thousands of miles away at the time, calling and spoke about Glenn Jackson having been assassinated. How many people at the time of Glenn Jackson's gruesome murder considered it an assassination? And why, if it was indeed the Prime Minister who called in and asked that question, or made that statement, why would he have thought it an assassination? And in any event, what came of that? Then Jackson's wife, at the time of his burial, of his funeral service, said she did not want scapegoat justice. But it appears that that's what she got. They never found anybody guilty of Glenn Jackson's murder. And when they brought the young man into the court that they had initially charged, the public who went there eager to wreak revenge for the death of Glenn Jackson came away saying, go find somebody who could kill the man. Not that fella. And so it was also found by the courts that it was not that fella. But we have never found who was the person who killed Glenn. So nothing came of that. In 2011, we were treated to a lengthy diatribe on an assassination plot against Gonzalez. What became of that? But here we are in 2018. And we read in an eyewitness article dated 18th December 2018 as follows, and we quote. And this is Gonzalez they're quoting him. And the agency from overseas played a recording. And I heard the voice of the man from St. Vincent telling the man from the Dominican Republic, yes, I hear about that man from Puerto Rico. I heard that he does a clean job. I want him to do a clean job on Ralph. End of quote. Now let that simmer for a while. Understand? A Prime Minister and Minister of National Security in his capacity as leader of his party at the party's convention is telling the party this. He's telling the party this. Alright? So we ask here today, did Gonzalez recognize the voice of the man from St. Vincent that was on the tape? Because surely, as Minister of National Security, Gonzalez can call in the voice recognition experts from anywhere in the world and from any fraternal government in an effort to better determine who is the owner of the voice on the tape. Who is the person from St. Vincent involved in a plot to kill him? He can find that out. So Just Another Look is eager to encourage the Minister of National Security to have some international expert or experts help him identify the persons whose voice is on the tape. Bring them in quick. Let us see whose voice it is, so that we can then pursue it and avoid any chance of somebody engaging or seeking to administer the plot. Bring in the experts to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and have the expertise undertake the task of identifying the owner of the voice in the tape that you have. But you see, Doc, Just Another Look is asking one favor when you do that. When you bring in these experts or an expert in voice recognition. Please, Doc, please have them also listen to the voice on the tape that surfaced in the lead up to the last general elections in 2015, in which a man was soliciting sex from a young woman in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and apparently placing said young woman ahead of his wife. Let's have the people, while they're here, optimize their time. And let them tell us also whose voice it was on that tape then. Would it be nice to know? Vincentians may all benefit from the expertise in voice recognition from tapes. So let us do the two tapes at the same time and have the media present to reveal to all and sundry their outcomes. Wouldn't that be nice? But while we're at it, let us just make this point here. Just Another Look believes that it is a political blemish on the opposition New Democratic Party that organization did not itself pursue the matter of the tape that surfaced in the last general election. Instead, the party retreated into its shell, pointing accusing finger at who within the party was deemed responsible for the entire episode. We tell you this: the politics of the tape, its political value, was never understood by the New Democratic Party. And the party's reaction to its existence may well have reflected a serious chink in the organization's political armor. A feature that continues to haunt the party to this day. But Gonzalez rambles on the matter of an assassination plot at his party's convention. And it seemed at some point to venture into a line of reasoning that is particularly dangerous. And this may well not be the first time. In 2011, we told you, they addressed the parliament about the assassination plot then. Came, we said, a few weeks after the narrow election victory in 2010. A few weeks. The timing was instructive. But there were times in the presentation that one may well have garnered a line of reasoning that appeared to hint at a possible link between the opposition New Democratic Party and the assassination plot. But again, the NDP missed the boat on addressing that particular matter. You see, the NDP has this tendency where the individual members seem to focus so much on themselves that the cohesive approach that is required to engage in the strategic thinking, the critical thinking and analysis of issues appears to be lacking. So they missed the boat on taking the important issues out of that January 2011 presentation on an assassination. And they let it drop. This time, when you listen to the reasoning, one has to wonder whether Gonzalez is not making that link and making it forcefully. This is what the Eyewitness News article that we mentioned a while ago, this is what it stated, and we quote. This is Gonzalez. This is the Eyewitness News. Here's what it said. and we're quoting, they are getting desperate, Gonzalez said. You see, it's not easy to be in opposition for 18 years. And they are going to be there for 20. And then for another 5, you know? Gonzalez said to Cheers. End of quote. So, this is a clear reference to the opposition New Democratic Party. This is being said in the context of the plot to assassinate, against the backdrop of the plot to assassinate him. The article quote Gonzalez as, the article goes on, and here's another quote. Gonzalez made the revelation as he spoke about information he said he collected during a recent trip to England about people who want to buy SVG citizenship and passports. He said these persons are financing an ongoing campaign to get rid of the ULP. Now they give a direct quote from Gonzalez. It is now no longer an issue that they want to get rid of Ralph and the ULP in order to get St. Vincent passport and citizenship to sell. They still want that. But they say they want my scalp. It is now a personal matter because the ULP stopped them from winning in 2001. We want to end the quotation. You understand what is happening? Understand the implications of this. Understand the implications. Vincentians ought to be very, very concerned about the seeming insinuations here, even if the New Democratic Party doesn't appear to be. One must be concerned. But we seem to have some people at the leadership level of the NDP who appear to have more adulation for Gonzalez than they have for their own party leader. So one would have imagined that even though this was discussed at a convention, the entire nation heard this. And the New Democratic Party has not responded. Perhaps they are too caught up with Christmas. Perhaps they are just too caught up with Christmas to have an understanding of the implications of what was said here at the party's convention. This is the ruling party. And the leader of the ruling party at his party's convention making a link for his minions to understand. One has to ask, are these just insinuations? Are these just insinuations, or are they much more? This is a very dangerous precedent. If indeed the Prime Minister of this country, who is also the Minister of National Security this country, is declaring to the Vincentian public that the NDP, nearly 18 years in opposition, may well be engaging in activities that may somehow be linked to an assassination plot to get rid of him. Do we understand the gravity of this particular matter? It is not to be taken lightly. It cannot be taken lightly. And so the silence of the NDP on this matter must also be of grave concern.